Hello, I'm Mike Hayes, editor of Construction Europe magazine. ABB is a global technology company headquartered in Zurich, which recently announced a formal move to the construction arena, bringing with it expertise in robotics, 3D printing, and more. It also announced the results of a global survey of construction businesses with some intriguing figures for us to ponder, especially about skills shortages and productivity. I spoke about this and other things to Andrea Cassoni, Managing Director of the General Industry Business Line within ABB's Robotics and Discrete Automation Division. Andrea, you've recently published a report, had a report commissioned on the global construction industry, and the numbers are, for me, very surprising. Huge numbers, very surprising. Were you surprised by those results?
By some, definitely yes. In that 91%, basically everybody is saying that it's a crisis. That's how they've been calling it in labor and skill shortage. Yeah, that was surprised. We heard it many times. We see it, I would say, in everyday's life, but maybe not to that scale.
And do you think that part of this crisis has been brought about by the pandemic? And do you think that maybe the pandemic is accelerating this need to move into construction technology more?
Yes, we think so. We think that in general, all the trends that were already there have all been accelerated. All of them. The digitalization, the uncertainty, and also, maybe in this case also difficulties in having workforce mobility. So, people cannot move, for example, to join, or maybe temporary people to join the construction industry could not move. So, everything was really stuck. So a number of factors influenced the acceleration.
And do you think, has that changed the strategy of ABB in terms of this formal shift into the construction industry? Has the survey changed the way you're approaching that, or is this something that's a more long-term strategy for ABB?
No, that was a long-term strategy, and it's also part of a more generic plan to enter new sectors other than the traditional ones of robotics, typically, in the automotive, let's say, area. So, but this will accelerate our effort because we have really touched how deep is the issue.
Yeah, and you talked about the skill shortage. Obviously, this looks like it's going to be a huge problem in the next 10 years. How can the kind of technology that you're looking to bring into the construction industry, how can that affect change in terms of the skills shortage we're going to look at?
Yeah, well, we really see the more robots in factories, so bringing part of the building off-site, in construction, in manufacturing, in normal, let's say, environment for robotics, so to say. That's where robotics and automation are at home. So the more you move into factories, the more it becomes feasible to apply technologies, robotics, automation, let's say the manufacturing process, which brings also efficiency. On the other side, we will see more robots on sites, so on construction sites, maybe directly on the site or nearby, so kind of those small mobile, let's say, control the environment where you can build things and then you go away.
That's interesting because we had a construction technology webinar recently where we talked about this. As much as bringing new technology into the construction sites actually have to change to incorporate this kind of technology. And what you're talking about there is, more of this sort of modular design, more prefabrication, more off-site building. Yeah,
we also, we saw the need for all the system to move more or less in parallel. And we really see changes in everybody's position somehow, right? From the architects to the general contractors, the makers of materials, people renting equipment. There is this huge ecosystem around the construction industry that probably is now looking for adapting, how to surf the change and to take advantage of the changes as well.
Yeah, now, I mean, you talk about the ecosystem there, and my magazine, Construction Europe, is concerned largely with the European market. We have the European Green Deal. Sustainability is obviously a big issue. Can the sort of technology you're bringing to bear on the industry make a difference in terms of sustainability, in terms of global emissions?
Yes, we think actually a lot. I would say at least in two ways. One is waste reduction. So the more you get efficient, the less you make mistakes, less need for reworks, more precision, the more you don't waste material, and actually at the end you have a more sustainable type of production. Is what you see in manufacturing exactly the same. If you have the first run right, okay, of course you save material. It's good for the profit and loss, but it's obviously good also for the environment and for all the collateral, so to say, transportation costs. You don't go up and down with a material which is wrong and then become a waste, and anyway you need to recycle them. So that's one part. The other one, but it's not really as I would say, if some of the new materials are more environmentally friendly, it could be that they also fit better with automation. So if there is more timber, that's more machinable, for example, right? And so in that sense, so kind of as an effect of a move to more different type of materials. And I would say the last one, somewhere in the middle between the waste I was describing and this, is some technologies. 3D printing is an obvious one. In a way, it's also waste, right? You just use the cement that is needed, no more, no less. But it's also the possibility to create different type of shapes, forms with relatively efficient processes.
Sure. You talk about 3D printing there, and I'm sure you've got plans to roll out quite a few products into the construction industry over the coming years. But initially, what are you sort of launching into the market with? Can you talk a bit specifically about those products?
Yes, actually, for the time being, we're using our standard industrial robot equipped with 3D printing heads. And there are several players of 3D printing heads. What we're adding on top of this is our software, which is our proprietary software. It's called Robo Studio, and that's a simulation software. It's good for simulating process or operations of the robots, calculate cycle times, but it's also good to integrate other type of software and files so they can be transformed into a robot path. So for example, you got a CAD file that describes a shape of a part of a building to be 3D printed, and we take the CAD files, we put it into the robot start make the program basically alone without the need for programming and optimizing the trajectories. So this is what we're bringing right now to the market in terms of 3D printing. So it's software and it's our product, and we are working to further fine-tune our software for the construction need. For example, we already have a software add-on, let's call it like this, for 3D printing specifically, for optimizing path and speed, depending on what you are printing. We can make it even more targeted, for example, based on the characteristic of the cement that you need to apply. So it just gets optimized.
And do you have specific projects in mind for this kind of technology? Are we talking about infrastructure projects? Are we talking about residential? Where do you see that operating?
Actually, we are seeing it in almost everywhere 3D construction is 3D printed construction are allowed, or let's say the norm allows to do it. So now we start to see lots of components, right? Sometimes not structural components, but sometimes structural components. We start to see the first entire home 3D printed.
True.
I think that we saw recently from the Guardian, we saw an article of the first couple of people in Netherlands that is going to live in a 3D printed home. By the way, it was 3D printed with ABB robots. So, we see affordable house for some developing country, 3D printed. So I think that the opportunities are pretty broad. We saw the cement makers now looking at this very, very carefully.
Right. So there's not a specific type of contractor or construction business that you'd be targeting with this equipment. You're basically saying that anyone can up their game with this sort of technology.
Yes. Yes. What we can do, we're doing a knowledge transfer. We bring in competencies, equipment, knowledge, application capabilities that have been used somewhere else into the construction industry. So if you take this software add-on that I was mentioning, it was not originally the 3D printing add-on. It was not made for 3D print cement, but it was for other materials, plastic or metals. We can bring it to the construction on the cement part, and now we can even optimize for the specific characteristic of materials. So it's a transfer of knowledge which is applicable wherever there is a need in the sector. It would be the same when you talk about modularization and prefabrication.
Sure.
So we're bringing technologies, welding, assembly, gluing, casting, screwing, that we use every day in basically almost all other industrial sectors.
Yeah. And do you see specific regions where the construction industry is more willing and ready to adopt technology like this, or are you looking at a global rollout, or do you have specific areas where you think, yes, this is a win for us?
We're looking for a global rollout. We're seeing lots of activity in North America, a combination of, again, skills shortage, maybe now also the stimulus, that is also bringing infrastructure work, the needs for affordable housing. And so I think there's a little bit more, but also in Europe, 3D printing, I would say really globally everywhere. For modules is also, I think, a matter for now of history and techniques. It looks like some countries are more prone already to move into kind of volumetric units. Some others maybe a little bit less, but we think this is changing as well. Probably, but it's just our opinion, and for what it's worth. We also need a new type of architects to really start to use the full BIM abilities, connect to automation, and start to think in this way.
Yeah.
But you are the expert on that, so
I don't know about that. But I mean, what we do know is that construction obviously is ripe for an upgrade in terms of productivity. I mean, it's been 20 years with virtually no improvements in productivity at all compared with manufacturing, say. So we can certainly see where this type of technology could help. You've already got quite a lot of equipment in the field on pilot projects. What have you seen in terms of the sort of boost to productivity on those projects?
Some of the numbers that our customers are telling us are really impressive. We talk about the improvement of productivity from 15 to 30%, material waste in that range. Now, and then if you look at the effect also on timing, which is a factored into the productivity, it's amazing. If you can finish a project 30%, in 30% less time, you can start the new one. And so it is, yes, it's an industry which is, been flat in productivity. Probably also for very good reason. It's very regulated. It's an industry with lots of norms. I think it's not easy to change. You need to change rules, not only behavior, it's not only cultural. Probably it's also cultural. pretty, so some resistance to change, maybe culture, but there's also objective elements which have made it more difficult for construction to move in certain direction. But now there's no other alternative, so which is good at the end.
Sure. And what do you see in terms of because obviously one of the things that might hold back adoption is the investment that's required. Maybe not just the investment, but also the education. But how do you sell this technology in terms of a return on investment for those that do invest?
Well, I would say the return on investment really must be looked at individually, but it is very realistic to see applications, cases in which the payback is less than 2 years. Of course, it must be part of a broader strategy of a company. Generally speaking, I would say that's valid for all the investment. It's not only on automation or robotics, but a couple of years payback, it would be very realistic type of average timing.
Yeah, and obviously you've got a lot of R&D going on at the moment, and you'll have a lot of different types of products coming out in the future. But right now you're working with a number of academic institutions. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on, what we might see over the coming years?
Yeah, I'd say we are working on a number of aspects. One is the software integration. The other one is the collaboration, robots, machines, right? For example, how you can make sure that the robots, okay, let's say in manufacturing, this has been a topic since the very first robot. So either robots are segregated or they are so-called collaborative. So they are technically able to work alongside humans in safely. So in the manufacturing area, again, we move into a pretty comfortable and well-known territory for all the manufacture of automation. Now on site, the same logics apply. So we must make sure that we use the highest safety standards, no matter if robots are somewhere segregated, for example, in a small temporary factory near site, or on site even more. So that's another area where we're working, how to make sure the cooperation, the collaboration between robots and humans in a site application, it's just as bulletproof safe, I would say, as it is in manufacturing.
Right. And my last question really is, we obviously, construction technology is one of the hot topics, the mega trends in construction at the moment. And we're seeing a lot of talk about it, but in terms of the uptake, maybe not as high as the talk has been. Are you finding with contractors and other construction businesses that they are really enthusiastically taking this on board, or are you finding resistance?
No, I think we're finding both cases. We start to find the pioneers, as usual, probably, right? That are jumping it, ready to change, willing to try, test, make experiment, and find ways to work together. We'll find other more resistant, and then which are kind of let's wait. The followers they wait until they see this becoming mainstream, and then we see. And I think that's very encouraging. We see lots of companies in the middle, which start to experiment. They're not sure. The pioneers are sure. That's going to be the trend. They're pushing and they're driving. But more and more are becoming willing to try. So maybe more cautious, maybe less visionary, but start to test, start to try. We start to actually discuss with very large corporations in the construction, very large contractors that are willing to, okay, let's start to experiment now. So I would say that at this point, with everybody, basically everybody in this industry, realizing that there will be no people. So, I mean, I'm exaggerating, of course, right?
Yeah.
In this industry, in 10 years, I mean, what do you do?
Yeah.
People willing to join, sorry, I apologize. I mean, much less people willing to join. At least that's what appears, right?
Absolutely.
The vacancies in Europe the number of retirements expected in North America in the next 5-10 years.
Yeah.
So if you don't, I was talking to a person in North America explaining that, depending on the states, but in some states they have vacancies for example, for people like welders that stays there for months.
Yeah.
You just cannot fill it.
Yeah.
Not everywhere. In some places they can, but in other places, there's just nobody's applying for the job. So this type of
I mean, this kind of technology is exciting for us because obviously traditionally construction has been seen by a lot of people as being dirty and dangerous and demeaning, the 3Ds. And maybe with technology like this, it's a more attractive prospect to come into an industry that's working with high technology.
That's something that some of the customers are also telling us. I must say, this is very exciting also for us. The construction is extremely fascinating. It combines a number of things. It's very complex, a huge ecosystem, very relevant for the general economy, lots of high tech also, right? In the way you make buildings, but also what you put in the buildings, in the smart buildings, the sustainability, the aesthetic part, the beauty, the need for customization, which will remain, and how you combine the two, right? You need to create, maybe production on some components, but then you still need to keep the ability to customize, to make it beautiful, and that's a super fascinating topic also for us. And I think here again, robotics can help because, of course, you can have robots doing always the same stuff 7 days, 24/7. But then you can also anytime make a change and customize it, as long as you have modules.
Sure.
So this allows both certain productivity but flexibility.